and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us during this session, GEW Innovating Community through Entrepreneurship. So today's discussion, we will bring to you a broad topic, but with a bit more niche, especially on how we can use entrepreneurship to actually innovate community. So together with us today is actually Wan Dazriq Wan Zulkiflee, yeah? So Wan Dazriq is no longer stranger in the field of social entrepreneurship and also innovation. He's actually the founder of PurpoSE Malaysia, which aims at building high potential and scalable social enterprises. Dazriq is also leading the ventures and ecosystem within Accenture as well. So how are you doing, Dazriq?
Very good. Very honored also for you to invite me this morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So perhaps, Dazriq, we can start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do at the moment.
Yeah, okay. I'll spend a bit of time there just to make it a bit casual, I guess.
Yeah, and I heard you have slides as well, right?
I have what? Sorry.
You have slides as well, right? Presentation.
Yeah, just a very quick one. I think to set the premise of the discussion today, lah, kot.
Okay, sure. You can just share the slides right after that.
Okay, perfect. So I think thanks Zul for inviting me for your Global Entrepreneurship Week. I know it's interesting time 2020. A lot of things that we're doing is virtual now. A bit on myself, I guess I've started my career in private sector. A lot of my career have always been in the consulting space. Started off doing a lot of change and transformation project after I finished studies. Then 5 years after that, I realized that I wanted to do more than corporate work. And that's when I stumbled upon this concept of entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship rather. It's not just about, making money, profiteering, but also trying to see if entrepreneurship or businesses can also help community, societies, or even environment as part of the business cause. So that's how I got hooked into the concept of social entrepreneurship, and very sort of passionate, close to my heart, this topic on social entrepreneurship. And then after that, I've moved into the pseudo government space with Malaysian Global Innovation Creativity Center back in 2015.
You are a part of the pioneering team, if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Yeah, the early early years of Magic lah. So Magic started in 2014. Then I came in early 2015 with some of the team that focusing on social entrepreneurship development in Malaysia lah. So I've got hooked into that. Done a bit of a work here and there in the ecosystem development space for social enterprise for a good 4 or 5 years ago. After which then I founded PurpoSE. So like you've mentioned, rightly put also, PurpoSE is more of a private sector play, and the ambition or our North Star is really to help build or venture build either high potential or high scalable social enterprises that can go to market, scale, and even becomes a brand in that sense lah. So we, along with my colleagues, 5 individuals from various backgrounds, some are practitioners, some in the corporate, some in the banking industry and law example. So we started PurpoSE in that sense. And if you ask me why we kind of move into that space, because we saw there's a gap. Because when in Malaysia, I think our ecosystem are very public sector driven, right? So a lot of agencies like Magic, for example, churn a lot of social enterprises or early stage social enterprises. Also because about the ecosystem in Malaysia is still nascent, we realize there's not much private sector players to help social entrepreneurs yang dah run for 1 or 2 years to scale and grow. So that's what PurpoSE wanted to do. So by nature of that, our portfolios or the social enterprises that we deal with, banyak I consider as a mezzanine stage lah. Mezzanine in the sense of if they're already running in 3 to 5 years, they're looking to scale, grow, go to market, globalization, whatever it is. That's the area that we wanted to help and grow.
But I just want to stop there a little bit, Dazriq. But in a very conservative and immature ecosystem like Malaysia, when it comes to social entrepreneurship and very profit driven, I'm sure you face a lot of challenges to bridge that gap. So what are the ways that PurpoSE is currently taking to overcome the challenges?
Yeah, so you're right. So I think and by and large, comparatively, if you look into the social entrepreneurship space in Malaysia, we're not that matured yet. I still consider the industry here either infancy ataupun nascent. So when we started PurpoSE, while our North Star is kita nak jadi venture builder, but we realized that there still need to be a lot of education around what is social entrepreneurship. So the earlier things that we do, we were trying to promote social entrepreneurship by way of conscious consumerism. So the team and myself was pushing on. We had a program or initiative called Shop with Purpose, whereby we feature social enterprises to sell or promote their product. That's one. But secondly, also we realized, aside from venture building work, we can't do much in 2018, 2019, sebab there needs to be more of an ecosystem advocacy. Now, this is when you realize there's more demand from a private sector. Private sector here meaning, corporate, CSR, foundations, who wants to dabble into social entrepreneurship, but they need to have some understanding, appreciation, or even the know-how to do it lah. So we a lot of our work back in the early years was really around that lah, and also doing some workshop facilitations to corporate social enterprises and stuff like that lah. But 2021, just to extend a bit, we were planning, inshallah, if everything goes okay, and we're riding on this COVID challenges also. And we realized that with COVID, what happens is that a lot of social enterprises either dah consolidated in the sense dua lah. One is actually they move a bit into the NGO space, or rather they become full-fledged business model. Pure, not so much so for profit, but inclination to the for-profit model. Now, what does that does for company like PurpoSE, venture capitalists, venture philanthropists, and stuff like that? There's actually an opportunity for companies like that to invest in scalable or high potential social enterprises lah, by way of the businesses dah pivot, right? Ataupun they have evolved one way or another. So I think this gives company like PurpoSE to become a bit more opportunistic in the sense of moving into the venture builder mode, or even do some investment capital, go-to-market strategies with our portfolios lah.
I see. But would that be fair to say that because of the pandemic as well, it starts to segmentize which are really highly potential social enterprises with the ones that perhaps has very low potential when it comes to becoming a profit-driven entity? Would that help to segmentize this?
Yeah, I think it's a market force lah. Because it's a demand and supply. Because you realize, and I think it works well with our ethos, because we wanted to say our portfolio has to be the mezzanine stage yang dah in the space within 3 to 5 years. Now, the hypothesis is if the social enterprises is still running, going through this COVID, and they're still resilient about it, chances are these guys are the one who has high potential to scale. They might not scale now because of COVID or whatever it is, but they're resilient enough to withstand the current challenges, right? So that lies the opportunity or unlock certain values within the portfolios to help them to grow lah. So you're right, in that sense, it's a segmentization that occurs naturally. Now, I don't deny the fact also, and it's not wrong, banyak social enterprises also have moved into more of the charity space, the NGO space, because of the projects, because of the nature of their work and stuff like that, which is fine.
Yeah.
But you're right in that sense. I think the market kind of like sort itself out with all these disruptions that's going through.
So some die because of natural death and things like that. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. With every businesses, even small micro businesses, I think that bound to happen.
Yeah.
But you're right lah. I think it's part of the survival of the fittest punya the mantra juga.
But do you want to share some slides or presentations regarding that, Dazriq?
Yeah, I'll probably just do a quick one. I think it's more of setting the context. Am I able to share the screen?
I just made you as the host, so you can share it now.
Okay. Great. Let me see. So I think for the purpose of the conversation today, I think I wanted to set some parameters lah, because I think the topic around innovating community is quite broad. But what I wanted to anchor around is actually around entrepreneurship, or rather social entrepreneurship lah, as a catalyst to drive innovation to communities, especially with what is happening now, right? So I wouldn't focus much on this one. I think Zul and I have shared that context, what PurpoSE Malaysia does. Again, we're pretty much a venture builder company, focusing on highly scalable or high potential social enterprises. But we also dabble into the private sector space, where we help to co-create campaigns, initiatives, programs for them to venture or dabble into the social enterprise space. At some point, we also do some advocacy work, but that's probably the smaller portion of our portfolios of type of work. Now, for most of you who don't really know what is a social enterprise, right? So by and large, I think a lot of the countries, institutions don't have a standard legal or global definition what is a social enterprise. But essentially, however you're going to narrate it, there's only three key ingredients or factors that consider one as a social enterprise, right? So one, yang pertamanya, you have to have a social or environment cause at the core of your business, right? So this is from the NGO model, right? So you start a business, you start an entity because you want to solve a certain problem, right? The entrepreneurship element comes in is where you infuse that with a revenue model. So you have to run it as a business so that you don't rely on donation, grants, etc., but as an income to sustain your organization. Now, the third one is pretty much to measure your impact of your organization, and it has to have to do a lot with having a targeted beneficiary. So sebagai contoh, if you're doing into education, what is actually your specific area of measurement? Is it access to education? Is it empowering communities to get more education? Because that would be your measurement of success of your social enterprise, right? I always use this. So a social entrepreneur, you gotta have a mind that is very business centric, like someone like Richard Branson, and you also have to have a heart of someone like Mahatma Gandhi ataupun Mother Teresa here. So it's a blend of both. So that's a unique consideration or factor of being a social entrepreneur in that sense. Now, I kind of dabbled this earlier with Zul in our conversation tadi, because I said to me it's a consolidation, right? And then the market sorts itself. If you see on the left, purely on the left, it's a pure non-profit NGO, and purely on the right is for-profit model, profit maximization. Social enterprises, by and large, is a hybrid of both, and depending which one that you're closer inclined to, right? A lot of our social enterprises here in Malaysia is still closely to non-profit, right? So the subsidized model. Whereas a lot of the mature ecosystem have moved on to the trade-off or even lockstep or social businesses, because they do for-profit business as a normal business, but have a social cost that attached to it. But in countries in Malaysia, it's most by and large is still in the subsidized.
I'm just going to stop you here as well. I think most of the social enterprises, I mean, especially in Malaysia, they find it very hard to find the balance between making impact as well as making it profitable. And even some say that don't be greedy to get both, as your bottom lines. So what are your thoughts on this matter?
No, I think it's just a reaction of the ecosystem that Malaysia has now. And I think it will grow over time. And I believe also it will grow over time, because if you look into the talent space, sebagai contoh lah, right, a lot of entrepreneurs who already have that business acumen are able to balance both out. Now, historically in Malaysia, I think a lot of social enterprises come from the non-profit or NGO side. So not to say the lack of business acumen, but rather they still need to be some exposure or comprehensive capacity built to make them to be a good or ideal social entrepreneurs lah. But this is not unique to Malaysia. I think with every ecosystem that is rather nascent ataupun baru, you're still going to go through that challenges. But I think with maturity, I think you'll see the market sort of shift in that sense. So you're rightly put there. The challenge is real. The question is how, a lot of the ecosystem player, whether you're a government institution, whether you're a private institution, even practitioners are inclining to be matured lah, and move forward with that. Okay, so I'm gonna leave with these perimeters before we move on into the topic, right? But I like this quote, because what it says is what commercial entrepreneurs are to the economy is social entrepreneurs are to social change. And I think it's a good segue to, using social enterprise by way or as a means to innovate communities, especially in the current COVID-19 times. And this is what roughly Malaysia is. And this is where social entrepreneurs are in helping improving life, society, environment in the current Malaysia ecosystem, right? But I want to also share a bit in terms of the global social enterprise impact, whereby the ecosystem is slightly more matured. There's a significant contribution to the GDP by way of social entrepreneurship. If you look into the United States, for example, if you look into the United Kingdom and Korea to some extent, of course, obviously a lot of them are targeting at employability. But what also good to see is actually a lot of their public sector support, whether it's by, promoting social value act, like in the UK, for example. Korea, for example, have taken it as part of their Ministry of Labour initiatives to take social enterprise to sort of a mechanism to tackle unemployment issues. And I think this is where I think Malaysia is still plotting, right? We know social enterprise, there's a lot of value. Cuma we haven't really contextualized what is the ambition. And it's still, a trial and error process, I believe, but I think over time we'll get there in terms of the economic contribution for the country. So I leave it at there. And I think purpose, I think I've kind of said our ethos here is actually we still consider social enterprise as a business. So we try to move the needle away from, charity organization, etc., but we want to make it a full-fledged business because that's how we say business or social enterprise can sustain, right? When we say it's a business, it's really about commercial viability and of course the impact lah. And I think this is perhaps our criteria, right? So if we see there's a sustainability model, if we see there's a potential to grow and scale, we venture build social enterprises more. Now, venture build here is very broad, right? So it could be market access, mentoring, capital investment, etc. But we hope to do that with our portfolios, and hoping by all of that, kita can help the social enterprises to be more credible and deliver quality goods and services.
I'm just wondering, Dazriq, what are the services offered by PurpoSE, and what makes you different compared to the normal venture capitalists or other venture builders in that sense?
No, I think you're right. So our niche is pretty much in the social entrepreneurship players. And I think one of our reason why we created PurpoSE now, or even like 1 or 2 years ago, also we wanted to be the first mover into the space lah, at least from a private sector player kind of ecosystem. If you ask me, our model probably similar with other VCs out there, but it's a bit of a hybrid. Hybrid in the sense of it's not a pure VC whereby, you know, we put in capital, then we leave you, and then we'll sit on your board or whatever it is, then we review. But rather we wanted to deep dive a bit. So in the sense of, you know, if you're a social entrepreneurs or social enterprises that run for 2-3 years, you need help in terms of strategizing your go-to-market, right? You need help in terms of how do you want to, I don't know, franchise, commercialize, etc., etc. Or even currently also some of our portfolios are looking into digitalizing some of the offerings. So we provide that offering also as part of a package that we want to help these portfolios to grow and scale. So you're right, for most, I think baseline VC VB model is still there, but we hybridize it or hybrid it with some other components that we think would be value adding.
Understood.
Yeah. So I don't have any more slides, so I'm just gonna leave it at there, but just to set the context of the conversations today.
Yeah. But I have another question from Izhar Ashari Dazriq.
Yeah.
So he asked, actually, when we talk about empowering community and entrepreneurship, people think it is a very straightforward answer, yeah? But he has also seen so many B40 businesses fail, and some of them are still struggling. So what are your thoughts on this, and how can we help to actually assist the B40 businesses?
I think, yeah, you're right. That's no right or wrong question or even answer. But my point of view is this, right? If you're a social enterprise, now be very cognizant here about being a businessman and an entrepreneur. It is a two different thing. I think a lot of misconception happen when you muddle the two. And I think it's unwise to do that, because if you're an entrepreneur, right, you got to be a bit more resilient, you got to be a bit more innovative, you got to be a bit more bold to some extent. Kalau you just a peniaga, a business, right, it's pretty much a trade model, profit making and stuff like that. Now, both has high failure rate. But this is where I think the challenge at the practitioner macam social enterprises yang run an inclusive business model. What I mean by inclusive business model is I, a social enterprise, employ the B40 group, right? Now, it's on my responsibility to empower them, whether it's market access, whether it's capacity building, whether it's about mentoring this golongan B40 lah. Right? So you don't want to just provide market opportunities for this B40 group, because that is essentially a businessman model, right? But if you're an entrepreneur, you really need to take them as part of your value chain. And hoping maybe one day, and I see this model also happen with some of our social entrepreneurs, employ this golongan B40 or your beneficiary to become your managers, supervisors, COO, CEO over time, right? And to be honest with you, part of our earlier 5 co-founder for PurpoSE actually does that model. So now he does not attach himself to the social enterprise sangat. He provide the advisory, but he have moved on. So the beneficiary group that he supported earlier, about 3 to 5 years ago, have taken over the social enterprise business. Right, so that's when I started lah. Being entrepreneurial is slightly different from just being a peniaga business.
But just to challenge that argument a little bit, Dazriq, that means that any businesses can also become social businesses when they adopt an inclusive business model. And would that be fair that social enterprise by nature, it can be adopted, or it's just a name that can be adopted by any businesses? Would that be fair to say that it's a very easy concept to understand and be adopted by other businesses?
To be honest with you, on paper, you're right, because fundamentally, if we go back historically, right, the very reason why people do trading was to serve interests of the traders. right? And this is beyond monetary, right? So we were talking about the first concept of transaction was barter system, right? If I nak susu, I trade with you with something that you nak. So if you need cow meat and I need milk, right? So we do a trading barter system. Now that concept is actually to serve a certain need of the traders, right? Now over time, what happens, especially in the 1980s, right? Capitalism took over. Now instead of promoting the value of stakeholders, we pivot away to promoting more value for shareholders, right? So what I'm trying to get at is that businesses, when it first started, it's supposed to serve the interests of community rather than who or people or certain group of people yang shareholders of the businesses or whatever it is, right? Now, I believe the problem with the current issues around definition of social enterprise, what is social enterprise, what is not a social enterprise, because tak ada that clear standard global guidelines what is a proper definition of social enterprise. The good thing about that is, and berbalik kepada your statement tadi, it opens up opportunity for businesses to pivot, to adopt, to become a social enterprise. As long as they meet yang 3 kriteria cakap tadi lah, the core mission is to serve society or community or environmental problem. Has to have a business model and have a beneficiary area lah. So that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think in this context, I think it's a good thing because it allows businesses, startups, enterprises to pivot to become more of a social enterprise model. What a lot that is happening now is actually it's a social conscious business, right? Which is fine. I think a lot of existing businesses wants to become a bit more socially conscious businesses, not a full-fledged social enterprises yet by way of that 3 criteria. But I don't know if there's more demand and more market to it. I think there could be opportunity for a lot of businesses to become social enterprises.
Understood. Yeah. And there is another question from Danila Rahman. She asks you have been in the field of social innovation for quite a while. What do you think are the key challenges as social innovators to adopt innovation in community?
Wow, heavy loaded.
I'm just reading all the questions to you.
No, yeah, it's fair. No, I think you gotta break down that question. I think Dalila was it depending on where you see it, right? Whether you're an academician, whether you're a practitioner, or even a public sector. I always break down that into 3 different blocks. Yang pertamanya is around talent ataupun human capital lah, right? You want to be able to gauge, especially like in your local community or even in Malaysia, right? How much of a abundance of a talent that enable us to promote, propagate, ataupun very basic lobby lah, this concept around innovation or social innovation, right? And I think that's one area because you need more of a thought leaders, the one who can think, the one who can also do to drive innovation in your community sebagai contoh. Yang keduanya is really around capital. Capital here is not just money, tetapi infrastructure sebagai contoh. Now, I think government already started to look into this. Mostly sebagai contoh have started National Technology Innovation Sandbox, right? I think it's a good start because what it says is actually, hey, look, there's an infrastructure for talents to become more innovative and not being restrictive by any rules, regulations, or whatever it is, because the sandbox is supposed to do that, right? So that's another key component to drive innovation in community or even social space lah. Dan ketiganya is pretty much for me it's a public or public institution support lah. Government agencies, private sectors, academicians. What's the appetite for them to promote certain innovation or social innovation issues lah. I know it's not a straight cut answer, but I think again depending, you need to analyze and engage on at least on those 3 components and try your best to promote social innovation in the area lah. So if you're an academician, again, look into talent. Kalau you're in public sector, maybe can, I don't know, promote or even ideate some innovation in the community. If you're in the infrastructure, have money, private sector, maybe you can be, I don't know, if you're a chief innovation officer ke apa kan, I think that's another way to promote social innovation or broadly innovation.
Yeah. All right. And there's another question from my own colleague, Dr. Hanisaya. In a country where social entrepreneurship is really such an infant stage, where honestly, Dr. Hanisa thinks majority of our social businesses are still dependent on grants, what can we do as an ecosystem or venture builder to help ensuring more sustainable social enterprises within the community?
I think it's a double-edged sword. And I start with this, right? A lot of arguably more matured social entrepreneurship ecosystem started from market forces. Now, what I mean by market forces is, if you look at India, sebagai contoh, right? The poorest of the poor, the bottom of the pyramid is really hardcore poor, right? Of which they have no choice to become entrepreneurial by way of social businesses, social entrepreneurship, to elevate themselves of poverty, sebagai contoh. Whereas in countries that is not so bad in terms of the social economy, for example, Malaysia, right? So Malaysia is not that extreme case. We're kind of like somewhere in middle. We have some from a market standpoint, but I think a lot of the push here, and we see it now, is actually from the public sector, government support, grants, donations and stuff like that. Now, I think our challenge here is actually to find a demand for social enterprises to play in the ecosystem or in the economic agenda lah. I think we haven't found what's the niche for Malaysia yet. There's a lot of practitioners, obviously. There's a lot of support by the government, obviously, through tax, accreditation, and I think recently the SIM grant, match funding, to sort of spur that ecosystem, which is good, right? But I think we have to go through some more of those iterations. In answering your question, Doctor, I think we're still plotting what is the ecosystem look like. And I think depending if you're a government sector, private sector, or even practitioners, we're still being reactive and try to find our way. What is what is the picture for social entrepreneurship in Malaysia lah? So a lot of the tactical approach, I think sama je, mentoring sebagai contoh, right? So if you can do mentoring capacity, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a experienced professional, I think that still needs to be done for social enterprises. If you're a public sector, you need to think a bit more long term in terms of how do you want to support social enterprises beyond campaigns. Maybe something a bit more game changer, like social procurement, for example. Something along the act, for example, right? And if you're a practitioner, I think bread and butter, and I believe a lot of social entrepreneurs are doing this anyway. You always need to be resilient and pivot, especially now. This concept of digitalization, and I think as cliche as it sounds, you probably hear a lot of this already. If you're resilient enough, I think you need to find your network or opportunities in the ecosystem to make sure that you're able to push through in 3 to 5 years. That's my view of it. So there's no one straight answer, but I think everyone is still kind of finding their way in this nascent industry of social entrepreneurship in Malaysia.
Yeah. But would that be fair to say, Dazriq, with the current pandemic coming in, it has in a way forced more social businesses to be more innovative, especially in helping communities. So when you see this particular trend, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is something should be continued for the longer term, or would that help us to find other ways to help the communities as well?
No, I think you're right, and yes and yes. The short answer to that, and I give you. And I give you an example, right? When our first MCO happened in February, March, you realize the more resilient entrepreneurial social entrepreneurs are reacting to what the community needs are. And I give you a contour of there's a group of social entrepreneurs in the textile fashion industry came together and made PPE equipments for the frontliners, face masks, protections and stuff like that, right? So what happened, and this is the other form of consolidation, they grouped together as a collective social enterprises to support the frontliners through the PPE. PPE preparation and equipments and stuff like that. Now, currently, I'm also aware of the more resilient social entrepreneur who had to go through, rural places like the Borneo, for example, Sabah, right? While previously their modus operandi was going to the ground and do this capacity building, whatever it is. Now, instead, and this social enterprise is really new still, they actually not crowdfunded, they actually crowdsource unused laptop or secondhand laptops from community beneficiaries, partners, and network. Then what they do is they put in their content in the laptops, then send over the laptops to the rural communities in the Borneo. Now, what happens there, I think is quite interesting, because initially, if the model was just to help empower rural communities to capacity building, by way of sending laptops, machines over to them, to the beneficiary, they actually help the rural kids or youth to also onboard this digitalization lah. Paling-paling pun just how to use a laptop, how to use PowerPoint, how to use media streams and stuff like that lah. Which I think, and these are just some few of the examples lah. But I think if you really look into the community, there's a lot of this innovation that's happening in the societies, whether it's marginal, whether it's transformative, or just by way of disruption. It's really happening on the ground. And I think that's a good thing, and that's probably a silver lining that we could see lah in our ecosystem. Not just Malaysia, I think globally as well.
Yeah. There is another question, Dazriq, from Rosihan Juara Baharudin. Throughout the impact chain of social entrepreneurship, from ideation to scale up, which part of the chain is the least served in Malaysia, and which part is more saturated, and why is this so?
And again, I'll answer this with the contextualizing the global, and I think it's a good question, Jora. I think not many think about that. The most saturated is actually in the ideation space. Now, this could be the fact of government support, for example, right? Programs like incubators, accelerators, and stuff like that. If I were to put it visually, it's almost like a funneling lah, right? Ideation, there's mass practitioners in the ideation space. But we realize also, and I think if most of us here know, 9 out of 10 enterprises or entrepreneurs who first start bound to fail. Start lah, right? So if you use the same hypothesis there, you realize that only 1% of this ideation group will actually move into what I consider as mezzanine stage lah. And I think there's a lot of drop or fallout from ideation to mezzanine, especially in the social enterprise space lah. And this is where I believe the private sector working with the government needs to focus on, because I think without much government support in the ideation stage, the ecosystem will still survive, but shift the focus of resources to the mezzanine and the scale stage. Because I know it's not a concept of, can we build unicorn out of social enterprise? It's not really about that, but rather we want to make sure that the resource that we use are able to multiply or amplify over time. So I believe a lot of the impact amplification happens in social enterprises in the mezzanine stage or the scale-up stage, rather than the ideation stage. So perhaps something to think about, right? If you have a resources, you know there's a population in the ideation stage, but not much in the mezzanine or scale-up stage. Should we pivot or carve out some of these resources, emphasize on the mezzanine stage, social enterprise yang dah run for 5-7 years, bagi contoh, and help them to scale? Because by virtue of doing that, you're scaling the impact of these social enterprises. I don't know. That's something a food for thought, I believe. If you're in an ecosystem shaper, ecosystem developer, that's something that you need to look into. And to be honest with you, that's what private sector like PurpoSE and few other who are others in the space are looking to do beyond the ideation or early stage.
Understand. I have a question again from Dr. Hanisaya. Social businesses which usually built on conventional ideas, they usually fail due to the avant-garde nature of it, the imbalance between social innovation as well as social problems, or the solution does not fit within the social problem. So what are the things social entrepreneurs need to be aware of before they are on board for innovating the community?
Yeah. I think the very fundamental of it is actually understand the needs of the community. Now, if you're a straight cut entrepreneur, you would say user-centric approach. But if you're a social entrepreneur, you gotta say a beneficiary-centric approach, because sometimes your solution is really good, but cuma target market dia tak kena. And especially if you're working with the and historically right, if you're working with the rural, non-urban, underprivileged communities, and I've seen instances whereby the solutions are very tech heavy, in the sense of use technology, apps, sebagai contoh. But then you realize the market that you're trying to serve or the beneficiary you're trying to serve does not have that infra. Sebagai contoh, they're not very savvy on the mobiles, by contoh, right? So that's where the mismatch happened, right? On paper it looks good, but in practicality there's a gap. So that's where oftentimes the gaps are. So I'm not saying the solutions is not good, but rather if you really want to serve the interests of the community ataupun beneficiary, you really got to understand the real pain problems that they go through beyond your product itself. So I think fundamentally is that
I see. So Dazriq, you do you mind to just explain to us a little bit the initiatives, the current initiatives that are currently being taken by industrial players, to not just increase the awareness about social entrepreneurship, but most importantly to support social entrepreneurship to make sure that they are more sustainable and also they have adequate resources as well as infrastructure to grow their businesses. Do you mind to just share a little bit on the resources that are available out there?
I feel the questions are like exam questions. And it's a very heavy one also. No, but
or maybe there is a website that they can go through to know more about PurpoSE or the infrastructures available for them. Anything that they can do?
Yeah, I think in Malaysia landscape there's a lot of support given with the public sector. I think MIDAC and mostly through Magic, MIDAC maybe through InScan. Has a lot to do with capacity building for social enterprises. If you're looking a bit more tactical, things around Penjana, SIM-Grant, and then to some extent maybe the Innovation Sandbox, National Technology Innovation Sandbox. I think Magic would give that opportunity. But in answering to your question, I probably frame it in 3 different areas, and I think based on the audience and depending on where you sit. If you're a practitioner, if you're a businesses, I think there's a lot of initiatives about going digital. Whether it's through MDEC, if you're in Malaysia, sebagai contoh, and government also, MIDAC also is looking to do something. I would encourage you to at least explore that. Yang keduanya, broadly, I think if you're a business, social enterprises, you got to review and revisit, I guess, your KPIs, your mission statements, or whatever it is, just to adapt to whatever is happening now. If you have not done so, I think you should. Secondly, the group of, I guess, ecosystem intermediaries, and this is government sebagai contoh, right? If you're a government, I think our government in Malaysia is looking into this. Digitalization facilitation is something spoken about. Sandbox, I think that's there. And a good thing about Malaysia government also, I know it's a trial and error and it's still early stage. Things around Penjana, Belanjawan 2021, capacity building. I think we're doing that, so that's good. If you're a VC, venture philanthropies, investors, or high net worth individuals, even if you're looking to invest or do some more with social enterprises, I'm happy to have that conversation with you, because part of our 2021 strategy also is for purpose is to drive that through. But if you're already existing in this space, I think it's high time to reassess portfolio. Review your deal structuring or even quantum of your deal structuring, but also be the lookout of the prospective or new opportunities that may arise from COVID, right? So the traditional case of 2008, right? The rise of Airbnb and Uber because of the economic downturn in 2008. I think it's high time that will happen now, 2021 onwards. If you're just purely the people, community, doesn't have organization, whatever it is, and you want to support, start a social enterprise is one. But secondly, I think there's a lot of, especially this is Malaysia, there's a lot of avenue and opportunities to support social enterprise one way or another. Initially, we started with donation, but now I think crowdfunding has gained a lot of traction. And then I think it's a new way of financing, social purpose organizations, social enterprises. So you could still support in that sense. So I consider this third bucket as support and supplement. So yeah, that's one way to push innovation through communities as well.
Correct. Dazriq, I have, we are running out of time, but I have two last questions. One is actually a statement from Rosihan Juara Baharudin. I believe we need to move away from the romantic notion of creating unicorns in the social entrepreneurship sector. What we need is loads of healthy workhorses, which eventually will breed to create premium breed of horses. So what are your thoughts and what's your response on this statement actually?
I 100% agree. And in my head, the horse here is actually a zebra. And I guess that the hybrid of the horse, right? So and I encourage everyone here to at least explore this concept of zebra instead of unicorn. Because unicorn everyone knows high profit, high margins, exit, whatever it is. Well, zebra, there's a little bit more emphasis on triple bottom line, not just about profit, for example, right? But rather, what's the impact? What's the externalities that the company do for the society, environment, as well. And this is pretty much aligned to, what are the big players are talking about, right? So if you transpose that into, SDGs, for example, corporations or even exchanges are also looking into ESGs, environment, social and governance reporting, right? So I don't think this space of social entrepreneurship is actually going in silo, but rather it's almost a transposition of whatever happening in the global space, I guess. And things around climate change, renewable energy, and stuff like that. I think it has direct relation on the ground what other social entrepreneurs are doing. One of our main or more mainstream social enterprise in Malaysia is actually focusing on renewables, upcycling, and stuff like that, right? So that has a lot to do with the global issue on climate change and environment, sebagai contoh. So yeah, I think that statement I 100% agree.
Yeah. So yeah, Dazriq, one last question before we end the session. Do you have any advice or recommendations to those who would like to take up social entrepreneurship as their next venture?
I guess fundamentally, if you're a practitioner, if you want to be a practitioner, I think you gotta be coming in with a clear ambition and purpose lah. Because that would dictate everything else that you would do in 10 years time, the the line as well. But secondly, also complementary as equally important to that, you gotta be in with immense amount of resiliencies, especially if you're not an entrepreneur or seasoned entrepreneur before, because I believe it's doubly hard to become a social entrepreneur than a normal entrepreneur. Because you gotta weigh into your impact side. Yang tadi I cakap lah, the Muhammad Gandhi and also Richard Branson, right? So you gotta weigh into your impact side, your Muhammad Gandhi, and you gotta make sure your business also are running quite well in that sense lah. So but I wouldn't encourage for you to start a social enterprise full-fledged. Maybe start something small. A project, for example.
How small is small? Yeah, Dazriq, just wondering, how small is small?
Start with a project, I feel. It could be just a community project, because what you need to do, and I consider this as a pre-MVP lah, pre-minimum viable product or solutions, because what you want to do first, and I think berbalik kepada doktor punya question tadi, you want to make sure there's a demand to what you're offering first before you scale. Now, the most lean, cost-effective, less risky way of doing that, as opposed of starting organization businesses, run it like a community project. And I think a lot of our more successful or practicing social enterprises starts with project first before running a proper business. So I think that would be the most pragmatic advice of going about it. And obviously you can go on through this hackathon and boot camps, accelerator out there. I'm pretty sure, especially through government, there's a lot of opportunities to do that.
Understand. All right. Okay, thank you so much, Dazriq, for your time for today's session. I think we'll just stay online because before I end the live. But thank you so much for your time, Dazriq.
No, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining in. And again, Zul and the team for inviting. Hope it helps share some input.
Apology for the delay, for the technical error we had just now,
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, no worries. Thank you so much.